Borowski. Does anybody want to talk
I just
about
have one thing, I promise, I'm sorry, I'm really into these policies.
No,
It's like I dream about it. But after visiting all the schools, and I'm hoping to get to every school by the end of the year, I honestly feel like I'm like in a different bubble now, right? And so when you talk to people who are actually living the life and seeing the struggles and you listen to them, some angry, some appreciative, most people really appreciative that the board's listening. That's really basically what this is about. I wanted to talk to you, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but teachers are very suspicious people. They feel like they don't trust people. They just do. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. As far back as I became a teacher, there's a sense of mistrust, all right? Not so much of their fellow teachers, but other people involved in their hierarchy, right? And so I've asked about this probably 10 times in my first year and one time since. And I wanted to bring up the fact that I think it would really behoove us to have an outside surveyor survey our teachers so we can see as a board what's really important to them. It doesn't matter if someone's an expert or not. It doesn't matter. What I've learned is 3 years out of the classroom and I've lost some touch, that the struggle is harder now than it's ever been. And if someone doesn't listen to them, they're not going to stay with Clay County. We have to authentically listen. We have to listen about, I'm just going to tell you a couple of things right off the bat. Do we give them an opportunity to evaluate their curriculum specialists for worth and value? That's our money. That's a budget thing. Do we give the Algebra 2 teachers I've been talking about an opportunity to share that they hate the resource they're using for Algebra 2. Hate it. It's useless for them. We pay for that. What I'm saying is we need to have like a 5, I don't know who we would go to, where would we get the information, but it should be for the board. It should be for us so that we can be connected with the wants and needs of teachers in the attempt to make sure that we have a grasp on why teachers are leaving. When teachers quit Clay County, there's one form, it has 3 boxes. You select one of them and you leave. We don't have a follow-up. Why are you leaving? How much money are you getting paid? We know if they're going to go teach somewhere else. That's about it. And so I think it's so important. And I'm not saying we spend a lot of money, but I think we need to have somebody from the outside ask some really important questions, and perhaps that information could go to the chair to disseminate it to us so that we have it when we make decisions. We're all pretty much in touch with parents. I would say at this point that you 3 are more in touch as a parent than I am. But I will tell you, we're not in touch with our teachers.
I think one option we could look at might be not replacing anything that we're currently doing, but just in addition doing a school board teacher survey.
That would be great.
Directly from the board.
Like quarterly. What if we did a quarterly survey? Just your idea, whoever takes the seat, whatever, I think it would be easiest if the information went to the chair so that your boxes are even whatever, and then the report's made or whatever, and then it can be emailed out or brought to the next workshop or whatever. But then we, as a board collectively, could come up with questions, or maybe the company has questions or whatever as an outside resource. But I do think that that is something that we should look at that way, because like Ms. Hanson said, some teachers are like, I don't fill out.
A lot of teachers don't fill it out.
I don't fill it out because I know that they can see who it is, and I'm like, you can't. You're right. And then I'm scared of retaliation because I said this happened, and I'm not doing that to mock them. That's not what I'm doing today. I'm laughing because I hear it so frequently.
It's real.
That it is real. It is real. They're scared to speak up. They're scared to say whatever. And if, I don't know, maybe if they thought it was different coming to the board.
Sounds like every profession.
Right, no, yeah, it does sound like every profession. I mean, nurses are the same way. Every hospital.
Surveys are very common, and they're not usually given by the boss, right? And so there's a reason for that. You really need for people to be able to have trust in it. Maybe we could decide what areas, maybe we could use the internal audit as a guide. Like if we find out what 3 things we're working on, maybe we could do it then. But I agree with Ms. Gilhausen, and it's an excellent idea about like a board survey. we are the ones that, in coordination with the superintendent, make big decisions, and the little people really are not heard. I mean, I could talk to 300 teachers out of 2,700, but that's not the opportunity they're looking for, you know?
No, I agree, maybe we can, I'll get with,
I will
you
just,
guys
cau-
offline.
There's companies that do that.
I would just caution that, and I'm sure Mr. Rossi can speak to this, participation in the survey is the struggle. So,
Well, our newsletter that we're
We'll
gonna
work on
do,
it.
that I'm gonna get with Dennis to do, we'll encourage it. Our
but I
visits
just
to the
wonder, like, do
schools.
we want to incentivize participation in the survey? Is there a way to incentivize participation? You know what I'm saying? Like, those are things, obstacles that I'm thinking of that we need to be prepared for how we're gonna, which advertising is one thing, but.
And we're in the process, the board's attitude is, I mean, what people think about us has changed dramatically, I'd say, in like the last 6 or 8 months, believe it or not. You know, I started out with 2 teachers at a meeting, and now I'm getting 12 to 14. I really, really think just the idea, and our sincerity is not fake, right? And they can see our heart. So the idea that we care at that level might, like you said, it might not.
But I guess my point would be, I want to hear from those teachers who are happy, as
And-
well as from the
yeah.
teachers who feel like there's areas of opportunity.
I think we could sell it.
So the other part of that too is that when you receive results of any survey, as you guys know, you have to kind of evaluate the meaning of that. So for example, a teacher that hates the resources
Yep.
available, remember, we went through a state statute process to get to the point where we picked that resource. And sometimes and teachers actually vote for the resource, and the majority won for that resource. But if you're on the minority for that resource, you're then gonna say you hate the resource.
No, they liked the resource, it was wrong book. So
Well, that's what I mean.
But the thing is-
The book itself.
here's the thing, if you feel that way about it, your opinion matters too. If you're on the
Right,
other
yeah.
side, your opinion matters too. They all matter, regardless of where they fall, in that happy spectrum.
Yeah, everyone's opinion is
Yeah.
valued, but also understanding why that would be that way, why there would be percentage. So
Yeah.
let's just take the math resource book and
Yeah.
that wins by a 65-35 vote. It would seem logical to me
Yeah.
that 35% are gonna say they don't like their resource.
But what if I told you they thought they were gonna like it, and they don't have an opportunity to fix that within the same curriculum? Like, it needs to be changed when they realize there wasn't enough practice. What if I told you you're right, 65% said yes, and then they got it and they were like, oh, this is not it, we're stuck with it for the next 6, 7 years, you know? So that's the kind of thing that, it's not necessarily that they made a wrong decision, but they grew into it, they taught with it, and then, bam, it's not right. you
Well,
know?
and I think we've changed so many things in the last
Yeah.
few years. I think maybe surveying some feedback on how is the cell phone policy going in your classroom?
Yes.
What would you like to see done differently? You know what I'm saying? I think
Yeah.
just things that, when I think of, obviously the superintendent's priorities are important and that's why he does his survey every year. And I feel like, you know, we have things that have been important to us. And I think we need to survey to see how effective it actually is.
And different populations of teachers answer differently. The ESC teachers will tell you, this would be the greatest resource of my life. And when we do curriculum, we do get some input on that, but a group of ESC teachers is going to feel differently about a really great one-on-one, like, book they could write in versus an AP teacher or a regular teacher even. So I just think that it gives them an opportunity to, and then us an opportunity whether we like what we hear or not. I mean, I've been in some really uncomfortable meetings in the past month and a half, and it's okay, you know?
Well, I have it down, I'll
Mr.
follow up
O'Hara?
with it outside.
Yeah, I want to go back to our previous talk about, I don't know if this is the right time, but I'm going to say about cell phone policy. I wish we could continue to talk about it a little further and talk to parents, not just teachers. Talk to parents and get engaged with them and see what they think and asking for their input. As many as we can. We still have until July to approve policies, and we have time, so we need to make sure that teachers are happy, but also parents, because they worry a lot, and the world has changed dramatically, and safety to them is important, and they track their children to their phone, they know where their children are.
We do
Well, we actually did a
parent survey,
forum.
correct?
I was about to say,
With
myself and Ms. Hanson held a forum for cell phones,
Mhm.
and we got input through that time before we made the policy change, and we kept the lunches, but and that was our biggest forum, I think.
Yes, a lot of people.
Out of the whole forum, there wasn't one objection, and it was on every side. It was grandmas, it was, there wasn't, I don't know,
Union,
one
non-union
objection in
teachers.
there that disagreed with our policy that we actually currently have.
Yeah.
Turning it on.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so we held forums, we advertised the forum, we spoke about it at several meetings. I mean, we could do it again if you want, I mean, that's no big
Well,
deal.
I'm stopping you.
Well, I think if you're interested in feedback on that, could we just add that to the existing parent survey?
I think it's not, I think it would not hurt anybody, I'm not sure.
How about this, can we agree that we would go forward with what we said today? You know, and then if there's a change as a result of things that happen, just so we can get all the policies going.
I wasn't like discouraging it, I was just giving you the background
Okay.
prior to,
Yes.
you getting on the board, there was like a couple hot topics that we held forums
Media
for.
policy.
Media policy was one, cell phone, and I can't remember the
Dress
other one.
code.
Yeah, dress code, there was a couple things that we hit, but that doesn't mean we can't hit it again and that we can't get further feedback on the survey or whatever. I just wanted to give you the background.
And the
on-
takeaway from parents was, we know our kids have a problem with their cell phones, like they really do. The parents knew, and then you didn't even have to remind them that in an educational setting, that problem becomes magnified, so.
And I think the only thing I would point out is that regarding the survey from the teachers to the school board, if we're worried about participation, our teachers already have so much to do. I'm not sure quarterly is not too often. Maybe we should do it
Do
twice a
little
year.
ones, you mean? Just little ones?
I think just the annual survey would be
That'd
sufficient.
be even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to get the information soon enough, but at the same time, I think quarterly is too much.
And when you do it is important too. If you do it the last couple of weeks of school, some
It'll
people.
be, you know, for this year, it'll be a rush towards the end, and many of the policies, you know, would be almost to the point where the advertising has to occur in order to have them in place for the end school year. So there's a timing issue for all of that, and certainly started earlier.
But my
What
thing
do
would
what do
also
you
be
think about a
that if
February
we,
timeline for that? Like February of
Yeah,
next year?
January.
January, February. I feel like we'd get better support, and I think that's from hearing from principals around the county lately.
We need
February
it.
seems like a
but
struggle
if
month
a
with
policy's
student
coming up and we
behavior.
want feedback on it, or
Yeah.
a big hot topic, subject's coming up and we want feedback on it, then I think that we should have random surveys as well.
Oh, sure. I'm not saying you can't do that,
Because
but
if you were to make a change, let's say you get a survey and 80% of the people are like, you know, we're really hating this part of this policy, right? If you're only doing it in January, I mean, to keep in mind that if we wanted to make a change, how long it actually takes to make a change, right? With the policies, where you have to advertise, blah, 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 right? And we'd have to pull that policy if we decided to make a change. Neola will go through the entire thing biannually, a half each year with their updates. So keep in mind, like if we did a survey in January and the board really wanted to make a change, it puts a lot of, especially if it's like involves a procedural change, it puts a lot of duress on the district to make that happen before the next August. So I do think we need to think about the timing of it and give us all time to react, because there's nothing worse than getting feedback from people and then doing nothing with it. Like it takes a year to fix a problem. So I think, I agree with Beth, but that we need to be careful about how many we do. But I also agree with Ms. Skipper that if there's something that's popping up and very important in emails and you hear people talking about it.
But I would hope those emails and that
Yeah, we don't want too much.
Doesn't have to be just on
Yeah.
the survey. They're gonna
Right.
contact us at that
Yeah.
point. So, because we're never gonna be able to pick a time or a month that's perfect. There's always.
But they really only talk about 3 or 4 things. Like, they're pretty happy people. Yeah, so it's not a lot. They're not complaining about anything that we do or the district does in general. It's always the same couple of the topics. So I think we'll be pleasantly surprised, and then we'll learn something too.
All right, well, I'll work on that with the district to see what we can do about that in our letter. Anything else that you guys want to bring up?
Just make sure we ask questions that we don't normally ask them. That would be important.
Well, we could discuss that
Yeah.
too. We could ask, and that could be done through email, through
Yeah.
Ms. Bonnie or whoever that we
And I'm
need to.
taking notes from them as well as I go, so.
Right, and like, hey, this is the questions that I would like to be added or whatever, whatever.
Yeah.
We could discuss that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else from the board that you wanna talk about, think about, anything? All right, Mr. Brodsky, take it away.
All right, I'm going to go rather quickly through this. So I'm going to start right away with the staffing plan. You know, that's one of the items in the board agenda that you see in front of you. Sent you an email last week, and the booklet itself has been posted last week. And so I'm just going to kind of quickly go through this. So you know that each year we have a staffing plan that's brought. The staffing plan is brought in March. There's a specific reason why it's brought in March, because we have to do reappointments in April, and we start to post jobs mid-April. Then you have to fill all those jobs by August. Believe it or not, it takes that long to fill all jobs between April 15th and August. This year in particular, we've got the movement of the sixth graders and some other stuff that's happening, which would indicate the timeline has to be adhered to. So I would say there's three objectives to the presentation. Present you the guiding principles for how we came up with the staffing plan, as well as how we determine the staffing plan, and the financial impact is another piece of that. All right.
Do I have to do something?
There we go. Is that me or you?
I don't know. I hope it was you.
So there's us. Yay, us. Okay, is that me?
That's you, that's you.
Okay, good. All right, so let's talk about why this is important. One thing we try to do is provide stability. Remember, we've got over 5,000 employees, so the process can't be done in a short amount of time. As I said, March is when we go ahead and we bring the staffing plan forward. April is when we reappoint people. There's also mechanisms built into the system to ensure that we can meet our obligations. One is our PAC teachers, our beginning teachers aren't reappointed until June, as well as our administrators are reappointed in June, which kind of gives us some flexibility as far as the reappointment of people if there was some sort of financial urgency that would occur in between there. So that's already built into the system. Two, this is very fiscally conservative. You know, one of the things, once you develop the needs of the organization, you have to make sure you can pay for it. It's kind of a basic concept. And so you'll see that this particular package is very cost neutral related to the total cost of the package. You must have balanced the ability or the needs with the ability to pay for it. But I always say this, and everybody in the room will laugh at me when I say this. If you were to ask somebody, do we need more school counselors? The answer is yes. If you were to ask, do we need more custodians? The answer is yes. If you were to ask if we need more of anything, just name the position, they will say yes. The key is you have to not only meet the needs of people, but you have to balance your financial ability to do that, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if and they're all smiling because I start off every meeting by saying we're not adding more people. And we're not, because you can't afford that and still meet your obligations, but you have to. But if you were to ask anybody in the organization, ask the secretary of school, hey, do you need more secretaries? What do you think the answer is? Yes, they need more of everything, right? So there's a balancing act that occurs. But you'll see this particular package this year is very cost neutral, very fiscally responsible. It has to have flexibility to it. The reason why flexibility is so important is that it's been 3 months of preparing this to get to the point where you see it today. We use the 10-day count as a way to adjust. So if you were to say to me, is this package 100% accurate and good to go for August, is it 10th? Whatever day we're coming back to school. The answer is absolutely no. It's not. The reason why is because needs constantly change. So there's mechanisms that are built into the process by which we make those adjustments. One of those is the 10-day count, in which we do move people from school to school based on the need and how many teachers we have versus students. And every month, we adjust those needs, right? So I guess what I would point out to you is that this is not cut in stone. What we're doing today is not saying this is the tablets on Mount Sinai and it can't be changed. It can be changed, and in fact will be changed many times as those needs develop over time. I wanted to kind of hit on the balancing act that has to go there, because you might think that we need more of one thing or more of another thing, and again, it's a balance between the needs and wants of individuals and our ability to pay for it, quite honestly. And then transparency, every line is in the book. So what I tried to do in this presentation is take this book, condense it down to, last time I timed myself 20 minutes. We kind of give you the big picture of what's happening with this. So we take a look at it. How do we develop this? One, we use the goals of the strategic plan. We developed a strategic plan for a purpose. I always go back to, does it fit in with the strategic plan? You can't do willy-nilly stuff on the side. There has to be a plan for the district, and that's called our strategic plan. Remember, it's based on student success. It's based on recruiting, developing, and retaining teachers and talent, family community engagement, safe and positive learning environment, fiscal and operational efficiency. Those are the 5 main strategic goals. Remember, we had community meetings, we had all of that, we got to that process. We've already, because it's 1 year in, we've already done one yearly update, where were we with it? We do another one this summer, year 2 of it, because some things have changed over that time. So as you can see, we go ahead and we review that, we analyze, hey, is what we're about to do going to be consistent with that? And the answer is yes. The next thing we do is we review our current staffing plan. How did that work this year? So for example, enrollment at certain schools took off higher than we expected. And other schools, less students than we expected showed up, right? So then you have to be dynamic enough to go ahead and analyze how did it work this year, so that you either replicate the successes and don't make the mistakes of last year. So that's a process. I know that staff that's sitting here is excited, because we sit there around the table like this and we go one by one. Okay, let's go to line 1, line 2, in several meetings to get to that point. Once we've done that, then we analyze our current needs. And the analysis of the current needs is kind of interesting. Remember last year, the big changes were the conversion from our police department to the sheriff's office, and also the formation of our ESOL program in our district. Those are like the 2 major items from last year. This year, you're going to notice that there's not only shifts at certain schools, but also the 2 major items that I bring to your attention is the 6th grade movement to Lake Asbury Junior and Oakleaf Junior High. I'll talk more about that later on in this presentation, but that's a big thing that affects a lot of the items within this presentation, within that booklet, as well as where we are with our ESOL program for ELL students. That's another major thing. It didn't really affect the number, although we did add a few positions because we were short. It really has to do with funding related to that particular program, I'm going to talk about later on. I would just say this, when it comes to the ELL students, we're up to just below 2,000 ELL students. So to kind of give you a little history of that, in 22-23 we had 1,100, 23-24 we had 1,500, and now we're up to 2,000 roughly ELL students. So this has become a thing. When you see that pattern, you then have to make plans to address that pattern. That's what we've done. I'm proud of the work that we've done. It's been a lot of work. Our number 1 language, of course, Spanish. Number 2 is Haitian Creole, and Russian, Portuguese, Chinese. Students that are in ELL services have a scoring between 1 and a 6, which 1, 2, and 3 are really developing from everything from no English whatsoever on up to 5 and 6 are bridging and then in essence reaching or proficient in English. So the goal of any good program would be for students to be out of the program in 3 or 4 years. I can't even imagine not knowing the language and being in the class, right? Makes it that much more difficult. So I said to you, if I was giving a class right now, or I was giving this presentation in Russian, I'm pretty sure nobody can speak Russian at the table, you'd all sit there looking at me like, as I was speaking Russian, and you'd be wondering what in the world is going on. So picture yourself being a student in our school, where that's their reality. It's the right thing for kids. And that's really the goal or the marker that I always use when making a determination. So those are the two big things. So 6th grade movement and ELL, okay? Okay, then we adjust staffing accordingly. We look at all the shifts, how all the elementary schools combined into Lake Asbury and to Oakleaf and how those numbers worked out. We then adjust staffing based on that. Many meetings starting in December to now, essentially. So if you look at that, these are some of the things we use, but a couple of quick reminders, maybe Bonnie hit the staffing model. So the staffing model is in the beginning of your book. This is for, does that say elementary, Bonnie? At the top.
Elementary.
Okay, there's 3 different ones, elementary, junior high, high school, I just can't see that far. And essentially, it gives you a number. So basically what we've done is, you might ask, well, how do you know? Like you're gonna see that we removed 1 assistant principal at an elementary school because there was a drop in enrollment. Therefore, they didn't meet the threshold in order to have another administrator, so that was reduced. So you have to have a target for some place that's logical, that's scientific, that's number-based, that's rational, to kind of set a target for staffing. Because staffing is one of the biggest expenses that we have in the district, right? So you can see how we do that on this particular model. Bonnie, can you go back to the timeline? So on the timeline, we started back in December doing this, and you can see the list of dates, and I can't even see that, but I can see there's a list of dates up there, and this is just one date on the whole process that's going on there. And we started back in December to get to this point. Then it goes on to it being approved, and then eventually we go on to reappointments and then the hiring of people for next school year. So just trying to give you a feel for, in a very short amount of time, an overall process, what goes into it to get us to this point. Okay, so what we did was we took a look at, well, how would staffing have changed? This particular graph shows you all of the elementary schools. So if you took this booklet, all 28 elementary schools, took all the elementary schools and tried to make it into one slide, I thought that would be the easiest thing for the board to see. This would be without the impact, the financial impact, without 2 things. Without the 6th grade movement and without the ELL program. So this slide represents total overall package without those 2 things, like we said on the previous slide. So when you look at this, very little movement, very little at all. You can see a movement reducing 1 school counselor, adding mental health counselor. You can see, halfway down the page, or a little bit more than halfway, are the school safety officers that the board would like. So you can see all of those kinds of things in there. So financially, when I look at the numbers to the right, and I look at that, I say, oh my gosh, it's virtually nothing. Like, very little movement, very fiscally conservative when you look at.
So you're saying that the Guardian number
That would be the Guardian number, yes.
that we're adding
We're adding them, yes.
for our conversation?
For each school.
Right, now a little bit about the Guardians, we don't, publicly talk about where they are and all of that. I'm just trying to give you the financial.
I was just curious if that was like,
how much that costs in
Yeah.
order to make that happen. Another thing that one has to be cautious of or think about in this overall package is where's the funding source for that? So for example, we added a mental health counselor on this sheet, and the reason why we did is, one, we need more mental health counselors, but the state has given us more money to do so, so it makes sense. There's things that are called categoricals, where you have to spend the money on a certain purpose, and the state, if they're increasing the money in that categorical, that's a sign that they want you to, they realize that that's a need, and you need to hire more people within there. So the funding source is another consideration for adding. So if you're to ask people, do you need more of it, whatever it is, the answer is always yes. But then what might bring it over the edge to actually adding it is where the money is coming from too, right? And so when the guardians come from the 1 mil, and therefore you can see that you have that as a funding source. Mental health comes from mental health allocation, which the governor's budget has an increase in that. Of course, we're still waiting on what actually does happen, but the governor has set forth that priority, so we feel good about that. So I just want to kind of bring up the funding piece of it. So then when you go to junior high, you see the same sort of thing. You can see the addition and subtractions. You'll notice at the top, it talks about 0.384 teacher 6-period allocations. In junior high and high school, one of the flexibility measures that we have in place is teachers teach what's called an extra 0.128, which is if you teach 5 periods a day, if you're willing to teach a 6th period, we pay you extra in order to do that. The challenge with secondary schools is there's certification issues. In other words, if you're certified, in fact, true story, if you're certified for chemistry, that doesn't mean you're certified for biology. You can teach chemistry, but you can't teach biology. Science is not just science at the secondary world. The same would be true for math and every other subject. So what we do in order to provide flexibility is we pay an existing teacher that's willing to earn extra money for the 6th period. So you'll see that funny numbers like 0.384, that's 3.128, right? So that's kind of what that is. You can see support facilitators from inclusion on that particular one. Then in high school, you can see the same sort of thing. Notice, actually that's a cost savings if you do the math on that at high school, at the high school level, just looking at that, absent the ELD teachers, etc. You can see one of the challenges, and I was just at a statewide conference for superintendents, we're all talking about the rise of students with ASD and ESE in general, just the numbers across the state. We see that as continually growing, and so the need to support those programs is definitely out there. I know our group does a tremendous job in meeting those needs, and I know I'm preaching for the choir when I talk about how they're constantly growing that particular program. In our district, we're about 21%, and many superintendents, that was their topic of discussion, among many other things, was supporting the increased numbers statewide, almost universally, to all districts. And then you can see our alternative school, we kind of lump them into another group. Again, if you look at the financial figure, not much. I think very close to break even in a numbers perspective. So ESOL financial impact. So when you look at this, one of the changes that you'd see is the movement of 27 teachers from federal funds to general funds. And initially, when we funded the program last year, we had additional rollover money.
Yeah.
If there's money left in a categorical, typically the state lets you roll that over to the next year. It's kind of like, because I'm older than many, it's kind of like rollover minutes. When you had minutes to count, and you could use it the next year. Now, of course, there's all kinds of rules related to rollover, but in a general sense, you roll over. So there was additional money, so it kind of made sense for us to use that as the financial vehicle for the formation of our ELL program. So remember, We went from a district, and I spoke passionately about it a year ago. We went from a district that really didn't have a program that was, and I hate to admit this, that was robust for students. Like, it was just, we were not where we needed to be.
It wasn't robust.
At all. You know, we did have services and we did provide ways for students to acclimate to the English language, but it wasn't really enough. It was not good. And so this is a necessary thing that we need to do for our students. It's the right work. I defend anything that benefits students 100%, regardless of what anybody says. And so this was the right work to do. Well, the right work comes with a price tag involved in it. And so we were able to fund the other portion of the program, the 27 ELD teachers, because they're required. They should really be under general fund in order to make that happen, which is why you see that number there, the 1.7. I would kind of, also kind of point out that when we're looking at this, we're looking at virtually all schools impacted or involved related to that. We've seen some success. I mean, last year we went from 25 ATSI schools to 4, plus the 1 additional this year. So we've seen success. I've seen a lot of growth in our district and what people know about this, and we're going to make this productive for students. But it's one of the things we started with at the beginning of this school year. We're half year, whatever you want to call February, a little bit more than a half year. We've made great progress. We're still not where we need to, it's a long process. It's not going to happen in 1 year, right? But great work being done out there. I'm very proud of the work that's being done. But I'm kind of focusing more on the financial piece here relative to the program. Oh, you guys, that should look familiar to you. Right? That's the movement of students from 6th grade to the junior high. If you recall, we had community meetings, both Oak Leaf and Lake Asbury. Some of you went to different meetings there related to it. And remember, this was something that is done by 65 out of 67 other counties. The board had voted, I believe it was November, but I think it was November that we actually voted, on this particular issue. If you really want to look at it from a financial standpoint, the cost of construction, I think I'm preaching to the choir for Bryce and the team. The cost of construction is so high that in order for us to address our two needs, our two areas of need, Oak Leaf and Lake Asbury, it made more sense fiscally to expand the junior highs with 32 classroom additions out there at Lake Asbury and Oak Leaf, and then move some of our needy areas in need of capacity, move those students, 6th graders there. When you look at Oak Leaf, it's very, very easy to kind of see that because all the Oak Leaf schools are condensed. And so it's kind of like, when we had the parent meeting, those parents left like psyched. They were happy, like, this is great. My child gets to start doing X earlier, right? And so at Lake Asbury, we did have a few concerned about their 6th grader being with 7th and 8th graders. But when you look at most schools, like you look at our neighbor to the east that has a K-8 environment, it's not uncommon to do that. And we will respect that in the practicality of implementing this particular plan. But we've sent letters out to those people. We've had community meetings. They know that. They'll start to get more information as schools start to schedule. Right now, you're reaching out to the 5th grader that's now going to be a 6th grader coming to the junior high, saying, okay, we're doing our scheduling for next year. So I just kind of point that out because you might get some emails or something like that. Like you're thinking, why is this being brought up now? Well, we're planning for next year. It's full steam ahead for next year. So now we're reaching out to parents, preparing them for next year.
Mr. Brodsky, does that, excuse me, does it affect their curriculum at all? Like, I know at Lake Asbury, they have the STEAM program, that's the Accelerated Learning Program. Are sixth graders eligible for that?
I don't think they're eligible for STEAM.
And same for, because pre-ACEs, I don't believe, so same there, they have to wait until 7th grade for that. Okay.
But they can participate in, I know I was talking to the band director, band instructor. They're psyched to have sixth graders get there a little early, right? Because now you've got one more year to get you ready for that. Athletics would be another area a student could shine and develop. But most districts do this. I don't see any problem. I do feel for both schools, but now you're adding an additional 400, people, but you can see through the staffing how we did that. I think that's the next.
Well, academically, I know everybody talks about the enrichment you get in junior high, but academically, everything's geared to grade 6 to 8, including library books. So it's a natural vertical articulation. We should see, I believe, big gains in reading based on vertical articulation and close work with sixth graders. So I'm real proud of everybody who made this happen. And also, could I get a copy of that last slide in color, maybe at the school board meeting? So I could carry it with me?
Sure.
I don't have a color printer, and that's really nice. Yes?
I'll print it
Ms.
for you.
Brooks?
I'll print it and I'll get it for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so like, you may say, well, how do you do that when you look at the numbers and where they're coming from? And so this particular meeting, I think was Ms. Tino, Ms. Pickett, Dr. Sanders, and sitting there looking at each school's drop of enrollment, and then of course there's real people attached to it, which is why we do it in March, in order to make sure that real people have stability. You can see it's almost a wash when it comes to people and personnel. Of course, we'll monitor the situation when it starts. We can see 39 elementary teachers, 39 junior high teachers, and the movement of those individuals towards their schools. So you can see a lot of work went into that to get to that point. Still a lot more to do. But now we're at the point because we're going to post the jobs for the junior high earlier, so that people that truly want to be a part of that have first dibs of getting there. And then there's the movement that then will create. Look at it this way. I always get asked, will people have a job? Well, yes. I mean, there's more spots than there are people, so that's the way that'll work. So when you look at that, that's the total financial impact for all of those. You can see some areas like elementary and high school went down, junior high, because we're shifting so many teachers over to the junior highs. You can see the financial impact is a little bit more in junior high, but overall, very cost neutral. So there's the total. You can see, other than the millage, you can see almost inverse between federal and general funds as a result of the ELL expenditure. Then the overall financial breakdown, they always like to give it to you in several different formats. There's all staff, there's instruction, there's support, admin. You notice a reduction in admin, an increase in safety and security due to guardians, and federal funds, a reduction there since it was transferred to the general.
So what can those federal funds be spent on? 'Cause I
A
know
bunch of stuff, like we wound up our ESOL facilitators are moved to a federal fund in order to do that.
Okay.
So roughly less than half of the total cost of the program is in general fund, and more than the other half is in other fund sources.
Okay.
So we go through painstaking attempts to always find another fund source for that, but there are rules, and it's called the supplement versus supplant rule when it comes to federal programs and how federal programs are instituted.
Have we moved all of our federal funds into the general fund?
No,
Is that-
he's saying
No.
our,
Or
so
just when
we had to move, which positions out of the
The
federal funding?
ELD teachers, the English language development teachers, were moved from federal fund to general fund because you can't justify that under
Okay.
the rule related to that. We had rollover, so we were granted a waiver because of our rollover in order to pay for it for year
Yes.
one. Now we have to move those into general fund, but we're paying for the rest of the program through federal funds, which is,
Well, I guess what I mean, when you put it in general fund, it's under its own code or its own fund, under general fund?
yes.
It's just, it's in there, but it's separate as a funding source.
Right, so in general, we want to impact the general fund the least amount
Okay.
as possible, because other monies were given for that specific purpose, right? You wouldn't, to give you a crazy example, you wouldn't want to pay for mental health clinicians out of general fund when you're given a specific fund to
Right,
actually do
okay.
that kind of thing. Okay, so the district, very little impact to the district. Those are all the departments with no change and no financial impact whatsoever. So you're looking at that thinking, not a lot of change. There are a couple of changes in there. And what I did was I took the back part of the book and kind of condensed it to very small amounts of information. In Career and Tech Ed, there's a curriculum specialist that's paid for through industry cert funding. And then in the climate and culture, you can see the behavior analyst, very necessary. We're seeing more and more behaviors, particularly in younger students out there that, well, I'm not gonna, but.
Is it possible to get a, I'm just curious, because that's what my master's is in, to get a, I guess, duties and responsibilities like the expectation. I'm curious for the behavior analyst, the functions that they will be making. I'm sure you have Dr. Sanders, some kind of
There's a job description for
Yeah.
our board certified behavior analyst.
it's online. Okay,
We currently only have one, so this will be the second.
okay.
Okay.
Let
And
me know if
then
you need assistance finding that.
school
I think I can
improvement,
find
you
it.
can
Okay.
see those.
It's new.
And then you can
Reach
see a
out to me.
deletion of SendNet, the case manager there. Then in ELL, well, here's the answer to your question, Ms. Kilhouse. You can see that we removed the 10 ESOL facilitators, but we were able, from Title I, we were able to move the 10. You can kind of see the 10.5, 6.5 plus the 4. But we were able to move it to Title III and Title IV in order to pay for that still through federal funding. So every attempt is made in order to pay for it that way. Then facility and planning, you can see they moved their secretary to code enforcement from facility and planning. Safety and security, the coordinator position there is for access control. You know, one of the things that as a result of 1473 and the legislation and the locking of the gates and the doors and all that sort of stuff is there's more electronic badging than there's ever been before, and the ability to monitor that and ensure that access is cut off when it should be related to that.
I have a question with safety
Sure.
and security, I don't know, have we followed up with like how committees and stuff are going over there? If anyone has advocated directly for, funding sources for, mandates for security? I know we've talked about that, I know we've talked to a
So-
couple of our delegation about it.
So we submitted, you know, all the things that we talked about at the SHADE meetings that you guys requested, we submitted that information to the state. I'm not familiar with the legal or the lobbyist side of how all of that goes, but we did submit the request for that sort of stuff.
Okay, I just didn't know if we had heard back from, like,
No.
I haven't paid attention to committees, all that.
So we do believe that there's going to be some language changes that will be beneficial. That's the word in the herd until it actually happens, you know, who knows? But superintendents were optimistic last week related to the implementation of that particular rule and some of those things that are cumbersome to implement, especially the after school Ours related to that, I think that when legislators attempt to craft legislation, they don't realize the impact of the wording that they have, and therefore it takes a full year for them to recognize and hear from people that are now dealing with it in order to make it better. So I'm optimistic that that's going to occur. Whether or not there's going to be any additional Safe Schools money, there was a slight increase in the governor's budget, but as you know, the actual budget is usually a split between the House and the Senate, and it's very easy for the governor to put that out. It's really the House and the Senate that make that determination related to it. So I'm hopeful that we're going to get additional money, but not nearly enough in order to cover all of the safety and security needs, just from a physical perimeter as well as gate and electronic access standpoint. It's a huge expense.
I was just wondering if we were gonna get additional, and if they, I know some people were talking about it, but I hadn't followed up, so I was curious.
So there you can see the changes within the Department of Maintenance and Transportation, very basic changes there relative to those two departments. So you do all the math. Okay, the general fund is impacted 81 grand, the millage is 100 grand, federal funds 188 grand. In order to do that, I would gladly, I'll make this statement, I'll make it emphatically. Clay County District Schools does less with more at the district level than any group, and maybe I shouldn't be proud of that, but yeah, and ask for more. I always laugh because wow, this is a beautiful facility, and it was redone. This was the old print shop. At one point, you'd walk in, there was copying machines around here for those of us that are old timers, and the floor was actually giving out and giving way. So part of this remodeling was the fact that we had to. We had to do that because the floor was literally collapsing, right? So when you look at where our district is, the quote, district office, I came from Oak Leaf High School, which was a brand new school. So I always say I went from the top peak to the outhouse in a short amount of time, because we put our money out in schools. And when you look at district positions, 92% of all district positions are actually school positions, housed at the district office, but in the schools. Everybody else, that 8% is sitting in front of you right now. Right? There's not a tremendous number of people. Be glad to vocally challenge or debate anybody on that topic, because I'm very proud of the district and the work that's being done by a very small number of people relative to that. You can see not an increase related to that. Okay, so that was kind of, that's the shortest version I can give you of that whole book. Any questions?
I don't really have a question. Remember I asked you, oh, thank you, my gosh.
Make sure everyone gets one.
Just a question, maybe Dr. Sanders, you can call me one time, if you have my number, I can give it to you. But I am very just interested in the gifted, the addition of the .2, which Mr. Brodsky explained to me, but like how that's gonna work with the one extra period or whatever. I'm just interested right now.
Those are actually in elementary, and so it's somebody that's already there. I can explain it in more detail later, but those are schools that have increased their gifted.
Yeah. I guess I was interested in the one period left over if you went to like a .8, right? So we can talk
So
about
usually
it.
that's a 4-day a week, not a period left over.
So it's gonna be a
Usually
4-day week serving kids
Usually.
at the same school? All right,
Sometimes that person also takes on another job for the other person.
okay, all right.
Okay, so now I'm going to shift to the agenda. I'm going to go very quickly through the agenda. Many of these items are routine and handled every year. We're going to recognize our Scholastic Art Contest folks. There's also state champions. There's also the Ed First Committee that did a report to the board. That's once a year that they do that. So you'll see pictures of some of the projects that we're doing there. There are a couple of special actions at this moment. And also the staffing package is what we just reviewed. So that's in the discussion. When you go to consent, there's the minutes from the previous meetings, proclamation for the fair, the internal audit committee, I'm in the process. I've gotten commitments from 3 of the people that you have called me back to say, yes, put my name on the agenda. I didn't think we should put the name on the agenda until I talked to them and said, hey, you want to put my name on the agenda? So 3 of them have called me back and they've said yes. 2 have a message that I'm waiting for them to call back. Once it's locked and sealed, then we'll have the 5 names. So Kelly Renfro is the only one at the time that we published this had committed. There's 2 others that have committed. So we'll have them all on there by the time we need to have them on there.
You did good work. They're a really impressive group of people.
Yeah, sounds like a good group. And then the personnel consent agenda. Next, we have the appointment of the CCA and CESPA bargaining team. Related to that, each year that we do that particular item. Next, we have elementary student out-of-state travel. Then we have our career force MOU, which is the next item that you see there. Then the K-12 academic overnight, PACE, AMI. They all have their own school calendar that's approved by you guys. So there's the PACE calendar. Then you have School Social Worker Week, which is March 2nd through the 8th. You have proposed allocation changes for 24-25, and now we're starting to get to the point where you'll notice there'll be like 2 allocation change documents. One for this year, and then one for next year. So Ms. Hanson was referencing the one for 25-26, which was the .2s that were added. And so the need for those .2s occurred after the book was published. So this would be the process to add things from this point forward. Because we don't want to mess with the calculations within the book and all of that kind of stuff. Then there's the monthly financial reports, the annual budget amendments, the payroll calendar, the normal deletion of certain items. Then there's bid renewal for gym floor maintenance and our pest control management companies. Then there's the athletic field maintenance services, which was given to AgriPro company there. Then there's the contract renewal for our architectural services. There's 7 different contract architects listed on that sheet. Then there's the relocation of portable classrooms and sheds. Okay, and that company was T&T Housing. Then I'm just gonna hand it to Ops. I didn't count these, but all the rest.
Real quick about this is the company that would move,
Potentially move
when we move the students and you figure out what to do with the portables.
So I think, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to have a company on contract in case there is a move.
Okay.
for that.
We have certain stipulations of what we require from movers. And in that contract, it lists all of those stipulations that we require from that particular mover. We don't just allow anyone just to come in and pick up a portable and move it out. We have fencing that we have to take care of, not tearing up the turf, not doing all that. So all those stipulations are listed in that contract. This is a long-time mover that we've been using for a long time. They know the way we do things. So it just makes sense for us to continue using them.
Where are we moving? This isn't just, no, this is just a bid. This is just a bid for whatever we want to move one. So this is not just for classroom wings.
I was just thinking about the new movement from 6th grade to.
Yeah, it's not just for that.
It's
but
not just.
No,
in the summer, sometimes we have more kids show up at a school than we anticipated. We don't have
Yeah.
enough room. Hey, we need to move a portable from X school over here. It's the cost to do business, to move it, and that's all that is.
Will they
And we have-
move it and also install it and?
Yes,
electrical
yes, it
do it?
All
includes,
that.
yeah.
It's all included.
This is kind of a, just like a housekeeping. We've had a bid like this in place for years and years.
In addition, if we were to donate a portable, which we are going to do, and a couple of them, then we require that individual that's receiving that portable to use our movers also.
Okay.
Because of the stipulations that we have in place. So they just can't go out and choose anybody to move the portable. They have to use the portable, because of the insurance requirement, they have to use our portable movers.
I just want to make sure, because I thought we were having bonfires.
We're gonna try to.
So it's complementing ops, because the whole rest of the book that you see there is all operations sorts of things. everything from the Orange Park High School gym floor to emergency lighting and communication, the Keystone Visitors
Yes.
concession stand. So there's a whole listing of things. They really have done great work and a lot of work as represented by all the rest of the items that are in this particular book. So while, just to kind of end my portion of this, while we're doing this, last year, back to cell phones, 2,074 discipline referrals for cell phones. So, and then the fingerprinting thing, I think you have yours, you have yours, you have yours. Ms. Clark, you're coming due this year because it's year 5, and Ms. Gilhousen will have to get you in there.
I'll try to stay out of trouble.
Please.
That's all.
I was gonna say, I know there was like so much confusion, I'm like, I did my fingerprint.
I didn't know that
I know
there
I'm
was,
crazy,
like
but-
some hadn't and some did, that's
Yeah,
why
I
I
didn't
was.
know that either.
So that's it, Madam Chair.
So that was last year's referrals,
Yes.
not this.
Not this year. This year, first quarter was 617.
Good. Yeah, okay.
So, yeah, I mean, so I think the enforcement piece, I try to make my thoughts known on the enforcement's happening, but there's a balance that goes with it. You put all your eggs into enforcing cell phones, you can do that. But at what cost? The same way the sheriff is not gonna put every police officer on Route 17 to make sure they're not speeding there.
Thank goodness.
Because then they're gonna, that's what I use, right?
But she does do that sometimes, she puts up stings, so I'm just saying.
I'm just kind of pointing as a balancing act.
Sometimes we can set up sting operations. Okay, are you good?
Yes.
All right. I also just want to say too that when I first started, I know you guys have been doing maintenance and updating things and since before we were on the board, but that was one of the biggest complaints was we have all these old schools. Well, are we redoing stuff? Are we remodeling? Like what's going on? And that's something that I make sure that I emphasize to people how well that you guys are doing and that we are taking care of what we have and redoing a lot. So I always tell them that, like Mr. Frosty said, the majority of the end of our agenda is operations. So thank you guys for doing a great job. And, it's always nice to walk into something that smells new.
Well, and hopefully that's something with our newsletter, because we know from running, 4 years ago, everybody's information is 3, 4, 10 years old in some
Yep.
cases. So we just have to keep people up to date on information.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. So, seeing no questions from the audience and Superintendent, you're good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then, any attorney comments?
No attorney comments today?
All right, any board member comments before we end?
I just have
Ms.
one,
Hanson.
real quick, actually. So the 1% millage will be back on the ballot next year for the 26. And I believe the board members' jobs are probably to make sure that our stakeholders are aware of the great things that we do with that money. On that note, the biggest complaint that I'm getting is our description, Mr. Superintendent, about what we will spend the funds on. People want it to be very clear what we're gonna spend our funds on. So I'm gonna just give you an example. In Duval, they did a half-cent sales tax for teacher salaries. I believe the millage is going to pass under the right conditions. And the condition is that we make absolutely clear of the language that will be on the ballot. And I don't know how we actually go about that, but the more we add, the longer it gets, the less trust we have. So I actually voted no on the first millage because I read all those words going, where is the money actually going, right? And so I wasn't the only one. It was very close at that time. I think we need to do a better job on the language.
Yeah, so I would say that the attorneys will be the ones that'll create the resolution that'll move forward because there's several steps along that
Yes.
process, just doesn't show up on a ballot. And so the attorney will bring forward the language, the magic language, so you'll have an opportunity to look at the magic language and go from there.
And change it at that point.
So I would say, and I've said it
Because they want to know what they're giving us the money
So
for.
I've said it publicly, and I'll say it again so everybody can see me, so that I don't get misquoted. The mill for school safety and security, absolutely essential. Our budget cannot afford the contract with the Clay County Sheriff's Office without that.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Okay, so anybody that says I didn't tell people that, there you go, it's recorded. Okay, so we definitely want to, I
So
fully
the language is
expect
important.
that I'll be out there, campaigning and making sure that people know how important this is to the safety of our students. There's no greater responsibility we have than keep kids safe, right? And so that's critical to that happening. And so I think we all have to bring that forward.
Yeah.
We have a responsibility to do that, because if not, then that's
Yeah,
not gonna happen.
it's really important.
Excuse me,
Sir.
I kind of want to talk about, what are we talking about?
So we're talking about the 1 mil property tax is up in 2026, and the board's gonna have to decide whether they wanna go forward and bring the mill forward again. And then Ms. Hanson kind of brought the language is so important. I kind of said the attorneys will draft the language and bring it to us when the timeline fits for us to look at. But I also pointed out, without the 1 mil, the contract with the sheriff's office disappears. So it's very important that we all.
Do we have input on the language? Will they show us something? We can talk about it? I mean, how does that work?
I think the attorneys will draft the resolution for that and bring it forward, and then you can look at the language.
Okay.
I'm sure you can emphasize your point,
We do have to, if you're asking, we do have to vote on the language.
to prove it, yes.
Yeah, well, because, I mean, they were good with a lot of the language, right? It's just when we got down towards the end, the part about general fund, it was so long,
I
people
think
thought.
it just depends who you ask.
Yeah.
Well,
If you ask
it actually-
people, you are correct. If you ask people within government that run budgets and all of those things, yes, they are going to say,
yeah,
I support that because of X, Y, and Z. But when you talk to
a lot of people.
the common voter,
Yep,
I mean, look at what's going on in the government right now. I mean, they are gonna question literally everything. What do you mean general funds? What are you doing with that?
Right.
What is that general, is that going
Yeah.
back into your pocket? Even though none of us get paid any extra than what comes from, our
I
paychecks.
think
But they're
the
gonna question
hurdle
that.
we're gonna have to overcome is the language that goes on the ballot versus communicating to the public what that language means. Because you have, there's legalese that you have to use on a
Right.
ballot initiative, and then there's the portion of it where I think our responsibility
we have to talk
is to
about it.
pull those financial documents for the past X number of years that we've spent that money, here's how it's been spent.
Yeah, it's our job.
Right, and I think that, our newsletter will help with that, being in the public will help with that. I think a united front will help with that. I think, when we say united front as well, having the sheriff help us, if she will, I don't wanna speak for her, the superintendent. I think, people understanding that, hey, this is what's required of the state when it comes to safety and security, but Clay County wants to be here, but also that it's not a waste being here, because,
Well, there's 100 and some
kids are
thousand voters.
Irreplaceable, right?
In my
Your
opinion-
informed voters are a very small group of people, the super voters. Everybody else who votes, it's our job to educate them. Because they're not, in my world, my people are not engaged in politics at all. And those are the people that have to understand its importance.
Well, and you're also gonna have a lot of people who are just gonna vote against a tax
Yeah.
increase out of,
Yeah, they might.
yeah.
We just need one more vote than them.
Yeah, it's true. But I think a positive, campaign and a united front and letting them know that this is, having the public's trust that this is really where it's going and that this is what we really do need the money for. And, Clay County, an overwhelming majority of Clay County asked us to put the sheriff's office back into our schools, an overwhelming amount. And so when we say that, then we're gonna have to pay for it too. I mean, pay for.
Well,
whatever, so.
people will question if it doesn't pass, we get rid of the sheriff's office, what are we gonna do? So we have to address that.
Yeah.
Are we going back to district, or are we gonna stick to Guardian? You know, what are we required to do legislative wise? But I know from talking to people all these years, the only issue I see in the wording is when you talk about operations or general funds, you know, they wanna know it's going to safety
Yes.
and security.
So that's,
So we can
that's what we
address
do
it.
then. We
Yeah.
make it clearer for them where it's gonna go.
And when we talk
when we
about
decide-
operations, people don't understand though that that could be
Yeah.
gates and all the stuff, even though it lands under safety and security, like people don't understand that it's safety and security.
That's
School
single registry
hardening,
source.
school hardening is a good word
Right,
to use.
right. Redoing our front offices
Right,
so
right.
that they match, you know, state statute and what is required and stuff like that. And I do try to express that to people. I mean, we have, is our oldest school 97 years old?
Yeah.
97? So, when we're looking at stuff like that, and then half the people I talk to, they graduated from Orange Park or Clay High or Middleburg. Those are the first couple of high schools, and I'm like, well, could you imagine if this bathroom wasn't renovated since you graduated? So there's things that we can do, I think, which we all know, we're educated enough to know, but I think, like you said, verbiage is key. It's
And
very
during the
important.
election cycle, talking a
Right.
lot.
So,
And I think it might also be important for us as a board to maybe have a workshop where we talk about what it looks like if we don't have that funding.
Yeah.
I think that's something, we can't just wait and see what happens, we need a plan.
yeah. Well,
Anyway, that's all I had.
Mr. Alvear? Maybe, Mrs. Gilhalden? Ms. Clark?
I think tonight at Oakleaf, we've got at 6 o'clock,
6 p.m.
a concert, so hopefully some folks will join me.
Yep, I'll be there.
And if that is it, this meeting is adjourned.